Can a bullet fired into the sky kill a person if it falls on their head? Or maybe someone wanted to see what happens when you shoot a grenade. For this video, I've gathered 5 things that are very interesting to look at, but definitely should not be attempted at home. Therefore, in the video, we will be shooting at other cartridges into the barrel of another weapon and doing other misdeeds. And if you're intrigued, be sure to like and watch the video until the end. I think every man has pondered at least once about the very first experiment, and the author of this experiment was no exception, as he decided to test what would happen if he shot at a gun cartridge. For this, he took an air pistol that shoots lead pellets and cartridges of various calibers. The goal was to shoot the cartridge in such a way that the pellet hit exactly the primer of the cartridge, which would in turn trigger the ignition mechanism of the same cartridge. And as we can see in slow motion, the pellet indeed hits the primer and the cartridge fires. But in my opinion, it's most interesting to observe the behavior of shotgun cartridges, because when fired, we clearly see how a bunch of sparks fly out from the primer's work, followed by a slight delay before the combustible substance inside the cartridge itself ignites and the shot occurs. But what if these cartridges are frozen? Essentially, the substance and the primer should not lose their detonating properties, but we should not forget that the movement of the firing pin is still a mechanism, and if it's frozen, achieving detonation and rapid movement of this pin will be more difficult. Therefore, the shotgun cartridge does not fire, but it's clear with lead pellets. What would happen if you shoot a real combat cartridge at another cartridge? Most likely nothing good, because the kinetic energy of the bullet fired from a weapon is so great that most likely the primer of the target cartridge will simply shatter into pieces faster than it can detonate. Moreover, after hitting the primer, the bullet will continue to move further and breach the entire hermetic seal of the casing, which in turn is one of the factors that gives the bullet kinetic energy upon the charge's detonation. And I think it's worth reminding you not to try to replicate something like this at home or anywhere else for that matter. The next interesting question that has crossed everyone's mind at some point is what would happen if you fired a bullet into the air and it fell back down from above? Could it cause any harm to a bystander or even kill them? Well, let's consider a 7.62 caliber AK-47 bullet. From high school physics, we may remember that any object launched upwards slowly loses its acceleration, after which it reaches a point where its speed momentarily drops to 0 under the counteraction of gravity, and then it begins to experience the acceleration of free fall. If we fire a 7.62 bullet into the air and apply the ballistic tables of spin velocity and mass available in military textbooks, we find out that such a bullet will ascend to 1.8 kilometers before it starts to fall. And closer to the ground, the acceleration of such a bullet, taking air resistance into account, will be approximately 110 meters per second, which in turn, upon impacting another body with 2 arms and legs, will have a kinetic energy of 50 joules. Considering the fact that for a person being hit by a bullet with a force of 80 joules is lethal, the probability of a fatal outcome is about 50%. We should not forget that the bullet also has a conical end, which can quite effectively penetrate a skull if it falls vertically down. Moreover, we have calculated only the kinetic energy of the bullet itself, not the impact. The area of contact is also important. In such a case, the energy of impact would be 110 joules per square centimeter, and that is more than enough for lethal damage. So yes, a bullet falling from the sky can indeed kill you. The next utterly foolish experiment goes something like this. What happens if you fire 2 bullets directly at each other simultaneously? To conduct such an experiment, a multitude of factors need to be taken into account, from the precision of aiming the guns at each other to the synchronicity of the shots. For this, pneumatic switches were needed, which would simultaneously trigger the weapon's triggers when the circuit is closed. In this experiment, 2 rifles and cartridges with solid bullets were used. We can observe how the 2 bullets collide with each other, and due to the release of a large amount of heat, flames even appear for a moment. The energy is so great that the bullets literally fuse into each other and become one whole. So, although this experiment is quite foolish, it yields some interesting results. And now for something truly intriguing. You've also tried shooting at flying grenades or C4 in some video games, haven't you? Indeed, movies and games have cemented in our minds the idea that shooting at a gas tank or any other explosive material must surely detonate it. Now, we'll find out what really happens to a grenade in real life if it's shot at. Detonating a grenade in real life is not that simple. Any grenade has a detonator that is activated by pulling the pin and the handle springing off, after which the detonator ignites the substance in the grenade's walls, requiring a very high temperature for detonation. If you shoot a grenade with an AK-47 anywhere except the center, it won't detonate because the explosive substance in the detonator wasn't hit. However, a different result will occur if you hit the grenade's detonator directly. Then the grenade will indeed explode. The situation with a TNT charge is similar. Hitting the charge itself won't do anything. A detonator, which they are usually equipped with after being set, is needed. So shooting at a box of explosives in real life is likely not to be as spectacular as it is shown in video games. And at last, most boneheaded experiment one could conceive with weapons is what happens if you take two pistols, point their barrels directly at each other and fire simultaneously. The author of the channel Destructive Ranch decided to undertake this to see what would result. He took a wooden board to which he attached two pistols with regular construction plastic ties. The first two attempts to destroy the pistols were not successful because at first he didn't use any automatic system for simultaneous firing, just a simple rope. And apparently the calibers of the two previous pistols firing at a Glock were too small to damage the pistol's barrel. When fired, two bullets fly into each other, and the bullet with greater kinetic energy should theoretically push the mass towards the side with less energy. However, a Desert Eagle managed to penetrate the pistol through and through, even though the shots were supposedly fired simultaneously. Naturally, after such experiments, most of the pistols were completely ruined. And the conclusion? Well, who knows? The experiment was foolish. So in the end, we just have a bunch of wrecked weapons. Diving into these daredevil experiments from sky-high bullet adventures to grenade shootouts packs a wild ride into the physics of mayhem. It's a thrilling reminder that while curiosity sparks fun, mixing bullets and explosives should be left to the pros. So let's keep the action on screen and safety in our hands, ensuring our adventures end with high fives, not high risks.
Pistol, and we're gonna.
What the f? Got to your bitty. Swag, bitch. Swag.